Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
Well, this is our last class of this topic. I came on to hear that there's another class that Rabbi Pernick and I will be teaching. I don't know about it yet, but can't wait to teach it. We thought that we would open up with a topic, just like we have for the past 3 seasons, a topic that came to mind in terms of the halakha of the episode. So just things that we noticed in the episode that we would have talked about, whether or not it was the last episode of the whole show. And then we thought we would spend some time talking about the show as a whole, and then we would kind of wrap things up and I guess take suggestions as to what comes next, which is very exciting for me. I kind of assumed that Rabbi Pernick was done with me and that I would have to pull teeth for us to do something, but it looks like you're all doing my job for me. So it'll be great to teach our next class together. Okay, so Rabbi Pernick, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Okay, so the topic that we were thinking about, there's not so much halachically in this episode, to really talk about. But there was one piece that, it was actually an interesting segue because we, back when pre-Srugim, when we had our shtisel class in New Orleans, one of the topics that came up in one of the episodes was about the concept of what's called shmirat einayim, or sort of guarding your eyes, which is sort of the opposite side of tzniut, right? Tzniut is about modesty and dress and so forth. But on the flip side, there's this idea of shmirat einayim, which is sort of guarding your eyes, which is typically for the other party. If women are expected to be, because typically it's women who are expected to be modest, men who are expected to sort of avert their gaze or not be, not looking at women for the purposes, of getting sexual pleasure. Often the way this actually presents practically, though, is that rather than it being sort of women are expected to be modest, men are expected to sort of avert their eyes, you end up with things like you see in this episode where there's a, reasonably modest picture of Hodaya on a poster advertising her new radio show, and it's being, everywhere that it appears, it's being sort of blacked out and spray painted over. And we talked a little bit about how this is still, to this day, a very common phenomenon. Let me see here. I'm just going to pull up, this was actually, let's do this article. So I brought in this article earlier, which is just from 3 weeks ago, in Israel, right, from October 1st, that was about actually a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor, where there's a picture outside of, I guess, Jerusalem City Hall of this 94-year-old Holocaust survivor, and then underneath it, I guess, a picture of an activist or something like that, and this picture of this 94-year-old woman was spray painted over, much like Hodaya's picture was spray painted over. And I think it's at 6 different times they cleaned the graffiti, and every single time it was graffitied over again. It was spray painted over again. So this is something that is, took place in the episode, but is very much a thing in real life that in Jerusalem in particular. Not if you go to Tel Aviv or other places in Israel, not so much, but in Jerusalem, and not just in like Mea Shari, but like really kind of around, maybe not everywhere in Jerusalem, but certainly in sort of big public places like City Hall. In those areas, you will have people just go and spray paint over pictures of women. And so this sort of gets to the idea of shmirat einayim, that someone might, it's its own whole conversation about the way that by avoiding putting pictures of women in newspapers and magazines and so forth,
and
textbooks and et cetera, like suddenly everything about women becomes sexualized in ways that is not remotely sexualized. A 94-year-old Holocaust survivor shouldn't be a sexualized image for people. Yeah, Jeff, were you going to say something?
I just a little off topic. do people get arrested? I mean, defacing property or destroying property, is that a possibility?
So it mentioned in one of these articles, I have like a beetle or something on me. In one of these articles, it mentioned that basically, like, there's only been one arrest made in such cases. Let me see if I can find.
I think they have to catch somebody.
But they are fined. Often there's a fine associated. At least that's what I heard about when I was living in Israel. But it's also possible that, to Renee's point, like, they're not always found. It's not always the case, like we saw in our episode, where they're kind of accosted by someone and known.
Right. Right. I mean, this article here talks about how, the entrance to the city is monitored by surveillance cameras. In theory, it should be possible. It says during a police representative said that over the last 3 years, 21 files had been opened following vandalizing of women's photos in public areas. He said that all these files had been closed except for one, which had been transferred to the state prosecutor's office. I assume it being closed, I don't know, maybe that means they arrested someone or fined someone. I sort of assume there was just they didn't have any evidence of who did it, and so it was closed in that way. So it seems like
it's just not important enough to continue on, which in the scheme of things, it's obviously horrendous, but it's nowhere near murder. So I think that's another piece to this. And we come across that all the time in just the justice system in general, like what takes priority. And I'm sure that in Israel, this is not, for a whole host of reasons, many of which are obviously not correct, but probably isn't making it to the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, this article was talking a little bit about sort of like the appeasement factor of like the fact that no one gets in trouble for these things, then it just allows it to be sort of normalized, and sort of like this idea of women's photos being defaced this way, and people who are spending money on publicity and it's just being destroyed, like it's sort of, okay, it's not a top priority, but at the same time, if there's a sense that there's no repercussions, then it just will happen sort of publicly the way we see here, where it's not like hiding, it's sort of, pretty openly these people go and they do this. We have a lot of hands up. Okay, I saw Norman, Rachel, I think we're up first. So we'll go in the order I have you on my screen.
This problem with defacing pictures of women and removing women has gone on for quite a few years now, to the extent that from newspapers routinely use Photoshop to eliminate women from pictures from the news. So, for example, when Secretary Clinton was running for president, she was not pictured in some newspapers, and you'd have pictures of people around her, and she would be removed. And it goes to such an extent that there is an edition of Megillas Esther with pictures where there's no picture of Vashti, no picture of Esther. The only female depicted at all is an incredibly hideous picture of a defaced daughter of Haman. And it's really very, very weird. And they, as you mentioned, Rabbi Pernick, they're doing this all over in towns where there's a large Frum population, and in many areas of Jerusalem, both Frum and non-Frum areas. And it's a really terrible thing that Iraq has fought about, but of course it is, as you say, a low priority for the police.
Yeah. The Iraq in this case is the Israel Religious Action
Center, right?
Israel Religious Action Center, which is the civil rights arm of the American Reform Movement
in Israel.
Right. Yeah.
And they're on their email list. And not only are there pictures defacing women or ruining and eliminating photographs of women, but there are some communities where women are supposed to walk in the street while men walk on the sidewalks. It makes me so angry, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
It's just not what I think. I don't think that's what God wants of anybody.
Right. I'll just share very briefly that, in terms of the Rabbi Pernick is when we tell this story, and maybe I told this story at the beginning of this class, but that's when we tell this story many times. In terms of the kind of the disproportionate access that men and women have in terms of just sniut in general, and the balance of who needs to be tznius and be, modestly dressed and modestly acting and all of those kinds of things as opposed to the other. So when I was living in Israel, we went to Mea Sharim to buy books. Do you remember this story, Rabbi Pernick? Are you paying attention? No. Okay. So went to Mea Sharim to buy books. My friend Sarah and I dressed like completely modestly. There's a hill, the way that we were walking, there's a hill in, and at the bottom of the hill, we took from our backpacks long skirts and long sleeve shirts, and she put a hat on because she's married, and we walked into Mea Sharim. We looked the part. We were really, really well dressed. And we had gotten off the sidewalk because a man was coming towards us and there wasn't enough room for us to not touch. So we walked into the street as one does. And as we were walking by, again, completely dressed, completely tzniusly, this man who walked by us stopped, and we were a little bit nervous he was going to stop and talk to us. So we stopped. And instead of talking to us, he pulled down his pants and peed on the side of the road. And very loudly, because this is something that my friend Sarah would do, she said out loud, "I have to be dressed like this, but you cannot have pants on." Right? There's no sense of, oh, but that's not tznius, right? For you to just be, relieving yourself in front of all of us. And yet we have to make sure that our ankles don't show. So there's definitely, it's imbalanced in terms of the unbalance, in terms of the way in which females are being regarded with their sexuality. And you see it in these types of eliminations as well, whether it's on a poster board and just with spray paint, or completely removed, as Norm said, from a publication or from textbooks or anything. But then, as Rabbi Pernick said, women become overly sexualized, because if you've never seen a woman before, then the first time you see a woman, you're very taken with the fact that there are differences to her body and to her physique. So I wanted to point that out as kind of a dramatic episode that plays into this. Okay, Rabbi Barbara, then Renee, then Leonard and Rebecca.
Right. I agree with what everyone has said. The thing that gets me angry about all of this is that, once again, it places all the responsibility on the woman.
Yeah.
Women, so this guy, they pinch you on the bus, which has happened to me, or, he takes down his pants and pees. It's like, you shouldn't be looking.
Right, right.
You shouldn't be on the bus so that he could do that to you. I mean, it's very much, it's so interesting to me, because when we think about the Taliban and the restrictions that they place on women, I don't see much difference.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It makes me angry. I'm with everyone else.
I would say the difference is that, with Taliban, it's sort of a formal governmental structure. Here, again, it's sort of this informal. No one is saying, there might be rabbis out there saying, but it's not like at a governmental level, meaning like they're appealing to the mayor. The mayor is like, this is bad. And the deputy mayor also, so like there are people saying this is a problem. It's just that, right, it's sort of a more like grassroots level issue, unless Taliban in that way. But you're right in terms of the erasure of women. That part is certainly,
And just, I think part of the issue is, and it's not just this issue, it's all the other issues that don't get taken care of because they don't want to deal with this issue because it's not big enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough people complaining, or they don't want to They don't want to offend whoever is in their right, in their right wing party that's supporting them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
I think, this goes into the area of how to give information to kids, right? That sometimes, well, here, let me put it this way. There are schools of thought that believe that if you never mention the words alcohol or drugs or sex, that kids will just come to not know what those things are and then never be exposed to them until they should be. And there is a school of thought that says, if a kid asks to taste the wine or asks to know what sex is or asks to know why, at least in Los Angeles, there are dispensaries for this thing called pot, right? If you explain those things, then the knowledge is there to be able to just not be mystified by it, just to see it as this thing that is a thing. And I think that the balance somewhere in between there is how you get knowledge of that which shouldn't be overdone, right? That you should have some knowledge of it to be able to have an awareness of how much is too much and that you're going to be exposed to it at some point in your life. But the complete, erasure of women is going to then just make you more excited to see a woman, as opposed to the opposite of, this is a woman, just like your mother, right? This is someone who, in that world, you're going to marry one day and all of these kinds of things. And that allows you to have a conversation then to not make it so overly sexualized. And the opposite is happening. So this cycle continues. And that, at least to me as an educator, that's the biggest issue, that if there was some amount of education at the beginning of development, that it wouldn't be as hypersexualized and overly, taboo to talk about. Okay, Renee and then Leonard.
One of the other things that bothered me was that it seemed as though Hodaya wasn't even, consulted on whether or not she would give permission to have that billboard put up. Because the first time that she saw it, she seemed really surprised that it was there.
Maybe, yeah.
When she saw it on a bus or when she saw it on the billboard, I don't remember which, but the first time she saw it, she was very surprised.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely possible. And who knows if she would have cared, right? She seems to care after it's being defaced, but who knows if she would have.
She seems to care more after her students bring it up in class, and it sort of gets in the way of her. The defacing thing, I mean, that does seem to bother her as well, but it seems like the impact on her teaching seems to, that seems to be.
But that wasn't about the poster.
But it might have been, because they were talking about it.
You're seeing the poster, you're seeing your teacher, yeah.
Got it. I didn't. Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't connect those two things. Okay, Leonard and Rebecca.
Yeah. So two things. You've already said most of what I wanted to say, but I do remember a case a few years back in Beit Shemesh, down the hill from Jerusalem, where a woman, an Orthodox woman who was modestly dressed, was accosted or whatever because apparently some people thought she wasn't modestly dressed enough. And that got a fair amount of press, at least in the Jewish press at the time. This was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so. Regarding the posters, it never occurred to me this was happening because of sneas. I just thought these were vandals who like putting mustaches on people's faces. I didn't realize that was what was going on. I'm still not convinced that was what was going on.
Yeah, I think the way to know, at least in this particular case in the show, to know that that's what was going on was that she was wearing a similar top to the one that I'm wearing now. And they blacked out her chest to make sure that you couldn't see her chest with the V-neck that she was wearing. I think that's, if it had just been her mouth and her eyes, potentially you could have seen it as one way or the other. But I think as soon as it becomes body parts that, according to the, laws of sneut, so to speak, you would know to cover, that's at least for me what the red flag was in terms of the vandalism in this show. I don't know if Rabbi Pernick has thoughts on that that are different, but.
Yeah. I mean, I think initially I also thought, so also knowing just the context in which, like, this is a regular thing in Jerusalem, about, right, this is something that happens frequently whenever really there's big posters of women where women are, you can see them. Frequently you have these issues. But I agree that when it wasn't just like a mustache, it was blacking out her face and blacking out, her, collarbone and so forth. And I think also the fact that it was sort of like all of the posters. It wasn't just one. It was sort of, so I think, definitely.
I was also going to add that maybe it's also a way of protesting the content, that it was a woman speaking, so you're listening to a woman read poetry and broadcast, or if you object to the poem because of politics, or you recall Azaria had who was it, Nadi, who thought, that was such a suggestive,
sexual poem,
whatever. Yeah, so it could be the content too, that people might deface something for a radio talk show that they object to the content under the guise of sneas.
Right, like putting the marker across the mouth to be like Kol Isha, right? That you don't want to hear a woman's voice, and for sure, I think it's all very suggestive in terms of the things that they do not want to see or hear or know about, based on her presence. Right, Pernick, was there another topic or thought that you wanted to bring up in the realm of halakha?
No, I mean, that was really, I felt like the main halachic or sort of pseudo halachic topic, but just again, with that kind of focus on how, right, even the term of shmirat einayim, guarding your eyes, right, seems to indicate that this is an obligation on the man.
Yeah.
And now somehow shmirat einayim becomes eliminating things, right? It's not just, okay, I'm going to avert my gaze. I remember was it in this class where we fought about Yonatan Razel? I think it was in this class. Yonatan Razel, who's a famous Israeli musician. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
No. Where he was playing a concert that was a concert
yes, we talked about this.
Yeah, for women.
Yeah.
And, and when women started dancing, he put a thing over his face so he couldn't see them, but he kept on playing, right? And I was like, that's great, because shmirat einayim, right? He is saying this is something that's not sneeze for me to be watching women dance, but rather than saying you can't dance, I'm going to cover my eyes so that you can continue to dance, and now we're both happy, right?
I still wouldn't say this would be one of those moments that I would like kick you under the table if we were in person. It wasn't great.
It's great because he's not. No,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
He's not compromising his halachic position.
Correct.
So
that's great. I would say that it's still offensive to take something and put it over your eyes. I think I said this when you first explained this story, whether or not it's less offensive because he's not telling the women to stop doing what they're doing, it's still extremely offensive that he is very publicly changing his look, right, by covering himself in a veil to not see the women dancing. That would make the women embarrassed. And
I actually think it's the opposite. I think it's a way of signaling to the women that you can dance without worrying about, snoot and things. My eyes are covered, right? If he had just closed his eyes without visually demonstrating that, they might be wondering, is this sneeze, whatever. But he's saying, look, I'm covering, he's demonstrating the fact, he's showing them publicly, I'm averting my gaze, so you can feel free to dance because this is all women except for me, and I'm not looking. So I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's a way of showing to the women, you don't have to worry about me looking at you.
They're not worried. If they were worried, they wouldn't be doing it.
Maybe.
They wouldn't be there in that space if they were worried about dancing in front of a man. They're not worried. He's worried, which again is fine. It's fine if he's worried, but I think that all I'm picking on you for is saying like that was great. I think it's
great. I still think it was great. But
okay.
I can disagree. Yeah, Jeff.
We were in Schatz a couple of years ago, and I think we were waiting. There was 21 of us in Temple, and maybe half women at least. We were sitting waiting to go to the next place we were going to see. And this young yeshiva bocha came by dressed in all black, black. And he took his hat, as soon as he came close to us, he took his hat off and he put it over his face. And I didn't realize why until, the rabbi explained it. But he wasn't going to look upon women in public. And we weren't dancing or anything. He was just sitting around and he just covered his face. And I just thought that was odd, but I didn't really know what the story was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Rabbi Pernick that it is always better when the man, if in that situation, can take the responsibility upon himself. Going back to Rabbi Barbara's point, can take the responsibility upon himself to say, this shouldn't be on you. This is on me. I still hold by the fact, though, that I don't think that it's okay or makes people feel comfortable by signaling in such a dramatic way to put something over your face. Just either don't be the performer or know that it might happen and then find another way to deal with it. But I think that is still embarrassing and still makes the woman or women feel like they've done something wrong. Personally. Renee asked a question having nothing to do with Yonatan Rozelle, who I actually liked a lot. His music is great. Everyone should.
And his Shmirat Einayim is pretty solid also.
Okay. Well, you go on a show and you talk about his Shmirat Einayim and I'll talk about his music and we'll see who goes further. All right. So Renee said, what about Nati and Rayut sitting alone in a closed car? Rabbi Pernick?
Back in Shtisel,
it's going back to are there other halachic issues?
Yeah. No, it is certainly a halachic issue. We actually, back in the day with Shtisel, we had a class on yichud in a car.
No, we did that in this class too.
Did we?
Yeah, when Nati was in the car with one of his first flings.
Interesting. Okay, so yichud in a car is a thing, kind of. Right? It's basically, there's a difference between if you're going along a sort of a public thoroughfare, then it's really not considered yichud. But if you're not just along the main road, then it more is considered. And in this case, there's a lot of yichud issues. They're like alone in the wilderness together. Like they're pretty alone. So yes, there are definitely yichud issues there. I should say not that there aren't other halachic things in this episode. That is, if we want to talk about yichud, that is very much a yichud thing.
Also, yichud or no yichud, I think that it is very clear that is an intimate action, whether you're Jewish or not, right? Like to be in the wilderness, near nobody, in a car. Like, why weren't they inside the house in a car?
The DVD player.
In a very small, I know, but in a very small space, watching a movie. Like, you don't have to be Jewish or halachically observant to know that feels like a very intimate moment. So it was definitely yichud, but also just kind of oozing with intimacy, even if nothing happened, very clearly a very close, intimate act that, people are not doing with just like their friends on a regular basis. But at least I don't think. Other topics are on this particular episode? Did anybody not like how it ended? Yeah, I kind of feel the same way Jeff does. Like, it was fun. It could have been a better ending, I thought. But Rebecca, Leonard, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I had two comments. First, we were talking a little bit last week about the goats, and I was on the iPhone. It was hard to participate, so I didn't say anything at the time. But I was just thinking back. I always like to know what the title of the episode is. So the episode was Chad Gadya.
Mm-hmm.
So just it's interesting how four of the main characters found their way out to the farm there and, the wilderness and interacted and, contemplated things with the goats around. And so Chad Gadya, I was just thinking, is just part of the cycle of life, in the Chad Gadya story, the kid dies and, that's part of the cycle of life. So perhaps that's, maybe what that represented with Amir finding the goat and all that, and then full circle. And then, sometimes also, when somebody's born, you think, first somebody passes away and then new life is born. So maybe it was that too. Yeah. And then my other comment was about the ending. I just would have liked to have seen when Hodaya went to, what's his name's Avri, when she knocked up the door and Avri answered and she went inside. I would have liked to have seen her see the red couch that he had bought.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the red
really
couch.
Wanted from the sidewalk.
It's a red couch.
Get to see that.
yeah, I totally forgot about that. That was a long time ago. Remember the red couch? She sits on the red couch and then she asks him to come and help her take it home, and he says, "I can't." And then he goes and he gets it and he brings it to his own home.
I don't remember that, but
yeah, she kept asking people to help her take the couch.
That was a great episode.
Yeah, she finally asked him, and the people who she was asking were all ending up at that laundromat.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Even that
might have been one that I missed.
The older couple sat down on it, and so it had the laundromat and cleaning and all that was kind of it was a very interesting episode. So she had really wanted that couch, and he ended up in the end going back and buying it and not telling her. So
I totally forgot about that. That's a great point. Okay, Norm and Rachel, Renee, and then Rabbi Barbara.
I really liked what Rebecca just mentioned about the elderly couple that ended up at the laundromat. I thought that was very sweet.
Yeah.
In terms of what does a long, good relationship look like at the far end? Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to raise, which we can come back to later, was kind of the different character arcs. Did we like the way it ended? Mm-hmm. And I thought what happened with Amir and Yafat was just beautiful. Mm-hmm. I really liked that. Mm-hmm. And for the conversation that was suggesting this intimate connection between Nati and Reut, it's kind of like they're out there in the middle of nowhere. I don't quite get a budding romance between the two of them.
And I think that she should take up with that guy who works in her firm. He's
kind of annoying. I don't like him.
No, he's not annoying, and he's very cute.
I also want to address Renee's question, because I think sitting in the car is a public place. People can see in through the windows, so I don't think there's a halachic problem with them being in the car together.
If you're in the wilderness, I mean, it's more you're alone together in the wilderness. You're right that the car is a public place, but there's a broader yichud issue going on.
We're alone in the wilderness regardless.
Yeah, exactly. The car doesn't change anything. The car, the house, outside, it doesn't really, it's all yichud. I mean,
the first time I saw an Orthodox date in a hotel, and it was actually in suburban Washington, D.C., and it was pretty remarkable because I had just read an article not long before that in the Wall Street Journal about this, and there it was right before us.
Mm-hmm. Go to Jerusalem, and it's like everywhere.
Anybody going up and down an elevator or happening to walk on there where they were sitting would see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea. If you go to, King David Hotel in Jerusalem, or, a lot of those hotels in
Anywhere.
Jerusalem. Everywhere. That's, it's great.
We will get back to the character arcs. It's a really great point, Rachel, and I totally agree with Amir and Yifat. I thought it ended in a really beautiful way. And in terms of Nati and Reut, there's when we talk more about the characters in a second, we can get more into this, but I'll just say simply that it seems to me that they are kind of both the most lost. And so they go into the wilderness, and who knows if there's going to be a budding relationship or not, but it seems like because they've kind of found the other person in the lost state, and at least they have one another in that moment. At least that's how I read it. And that can be comforting. Whether that becomes a relationship or not, who knows? But that can become comforting if someone is feeling that way to have a similar partner in the feelings. Renee, and then Rabbi Barbara, I think.
I was going to say that I felt like it was a little schmaltzy, the ending, but that they did make the characters come full circle.
Yeah. Except
for, I agree, I was thinking the same thing that you did in terms of Nati and Reut, that they were both kind of lost souls, and it made them appear more as they were both equals, and we were left with the question of whether or not there's going to be a budding romance from that or not.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I would like to see that question answered.
Yeah, it won't be. Sorry.
I know.
It would be hard to imagine. I can't imagine.
To imagine them together?
No.
I think that they're too into themselves.
In American spin-offs, it could be, the Reut and Nati show. They'd need to...
Yeah, exactly. Work it out.
Some other title than Srugim.
Mm-hmm.
But that's left open. And I sometimes feel like giving a show that has any connection or reflection of reality to it, that letting some things not be answered is a strength.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Rabbi Barbara. Oh, you're muted, but you don't want to talk. Okay. Okay, so Rabbi Pernick and I wanted to... Rabbi Pernick can talk anytime, but I'll keep talking for him unless he wants to talk. Rabbi Pernick and I wanted to kind of, as Rabbi Shapiro and I say often, like put a bow on this class, and allow you to also just talk about the experience of the class, and whether that's in reflection of the show specifically or... Rabbi Pernick just wrote to me privately, and I'm just going to read it to everybody because it's really funny. He wrote, "I'm not a bow person. Don't pin this one on me." That's very good. You should have written that to everybody. Okay, that's true. You are not a bow person. It's fine. I'll tie the bow. You can do the talking. But just to allow people to feel like this is really, to use the word siyum, right, to be able to kind of summarize the experience that we've had together, and to be able to talk about just the class, the relationships that have been built, the experience of watching a show and kind of picking out the pieces of Jewish law and of Jewish connection. And yeah, just we'll open the floor. Jeff, go ahead, and then we'll take them.
I just really wanted to say the shows I thought were terrific, all the shows we watched, but the experience of seeing it with a bunch of kind of new friends on the other coast, that I think that just made it really a wonderful experience. And I hope sometime we can maybe do something again together.
For sure. Well, we definitely are going to do something together in March when we come to New Orleans for Shabbat. Rabbi Kligfeld, lots of rabbis. Rabbi Kligfeld and I are coming with a delegation from Temple Beth Am to the south, and we're spending Shabbat. We actually changed our itinerary. We were supposed to be in the south last year, and we changed our itinerary based on this class to be in New Orleans over Shabbat, because we had formed connections with the New Orleans community and wanted to really to make sure that we had the chance to also meet people in person. So when it gets closer to the time, we'll definitely send out our details so that you can see us and learn with us. And Rabbi Pernick and I will teach something together. Rabbi Silver and I will be teaching something together. So you'll have the chance to get together and see people who will be on the trip. And then Rabbi Pernick and I will talk about whether or not we'll do a little class or something before that trip together to bring everybody together as well. I just said together a lot of times. Okay, Renee.
I think it was really nice having another group from another population be with us and get to meet people. I think you and Rabbi Pernick are great. What's it called? Compliment.
Oh, thanks.
And I thought it was I think it's really interesting to be able to take a topic like a TV show and look for halachic points within it. So it kind of was a really nice way to meld the secular world, even though it was a Hebrew show, but to meld the secular world with our Jewish world.
Yeah.
Thank you. I saw Hugo or Lise had their hands up. I don't know which it was. Hugo. I saw a hand from the Hugo and Lise screen, but I don't know which of you it was. Just unmute yourself. There you go.
No, there you go.
We think the class has a lot of class.
Thank you, Hugo.
And what date in March?
We're going to be there from the 17th, which is a Thursday, through the Sunday morning of that weekend. So the 18th through the 20th. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what was the plan? You'll be at
St. Joseph's Day.
What did you say, Norm?
We'll be there for St. Joseph's Day, March 19th.
Great. Awesome. I would have never known that. Great. What were you going to say, Rabbi Pernick?
I was trying to remember. You're going to spend Shabbos morning on that trip at Shir Chadash. I don't remember what you're.
You and I can talk about this offline, but
what was this like for you guys?
Oh.
That's a good question.
I'm happy. You should go first, and then I can disagree.
What was that?
What is like, what it was like for us. I really enjoy. I feel like particularly with with COVID times, just like co-teaching. I mean, this one obviously was sort of a much longer, year-long, sort of co-teaching thing, but it's a fun opportunity. I really enjoy the process of like teaching with friends, and in this case, something. So when I was in Ulpan in Israel, my homework every night was to watch Srugim. That was before it was subtitled, because it was just an Israeli TV show, and basically like argue about it with my Ulpan instructor, and like that was most of the Ulpan. It was like if I got stuck on a word when I was arguing with her, then that would be like a vocabulary word for me to remember for the following day. So there's something about, TV and, TV shows and things where they sort of naturally lend themselves to conversation, to debate, to argument. And in this case, having, the two of us with our sort of different backgrounds and different perspectives, it sort of, makes it sort of an extra level of, as opposed to doing something similar for classes that are much more specifically halachic. I think it's fun to be able to sort of do the halachic / TV commentary on the show. So, and it's been really fun to just sort of have all of you along for the ride as we've gone through this. Originally, we were only planning on one season, and it's just but it's been a lot of fun over the last year.
I don't disagree. We'll leave on a note where I actually agree with Rabbi Pernick. I just like Rabbi Pernick is not a bow person, he's also not a feelings person. So I'll add that. I shared with everybody at the beginning of this class that one of the best aspects of my experience in this fellowship where I met Rabbi Pernick was being able to have discussions like the ones that we had in front of all of you with somebody who I trust and who I value in terms of opinion, but who I don't agree with all the time. And first of all, that makes it much more fun. If I agreed with him all the time, I probably wouldn't have suggested that we teach this class, because part of what's so interesting is to be able to take something that is so crucial to all the communities that are coming together in this class, which for us, the topic was Jewish law, but really Jewish values and Jewish life, and to be able to debate it on two different sides And Rabbi Pernick and I never, disagreed so much that we wouldn't talk before the next class, right? It was always disagreement based on experience or actual, like value in our own lives. And that's real chavruta, right? There are very few people in my life who I would say I have true chavruta with in terms of my own learning. And part of the reason that I suggested to Rabbi Pernick that we teach this class together is because I also want people to value chavruta in their own lives, to have these kinds of conversations that are not always the same or not always agreeable, but to be able to see dimensions of something from all different sides, because you grow from that in the conversation and the people around you grow from the experience of that conversation. So I know that in my own life, without, a Zoom screen, I call Rabbi Pernick all the time to talk about things where he's not going to agree with me, but that's more interesting for me than to just have, an echo chamber telling me what I want to hear. So that to me was a really impressive part of this class. And I think that it was made better by all of you starting to feel like community. And that was just a beautiful takeaway. I can't speak for Rabbi Pernick, but that was a beautiful takeaway for me to feel like, Norm is coming to the South, but only to New Orleans because he has to get back to Los Angeles because of this community on this screen. And that's really special. So I'm glad that all of those things and the things that I value about my friendship with Rabbi Pernick could be seen kind of on the public outside for people to then value in their own learning and their own connection to Judaism. Michael.
I just wanted to thank all of you, especially during COVID this last year. The class and the discussion, obviously I have other classes with Rabbi Pernick and other davening, but the bi-coastal class, it's been very special listening to the discussion and watching the show together. And I just wanted to thank you all for letting me be part of both of your communities on both in the South and the West from far north. It's been much appreciated, and I hope we do it again.
You're welcome anytime. Rebecca or Leonard.
Yeah, both of us really enjoyed the class so much. The part about exchanging ideas, whether it was the rabbis or the other participants, that was, everybody was respectful, but it was always interesting to hear different views. It was great that we had Srugim to talk about the episodes so that you could see kind of real life applications of whatever it was that we were talking about. So that made it so interesting too. And then finally, I really enjoyed that it was ongoing and weekly, and we could look forward to it. And, it took time to kind of, get to know each other and the pace of it and all. And so, it was wonderful that we were able to have it go on for so long. So that was really,
I remember at one point back, I think it was at Gates Fest where I ran into Jeff and he was talking about how someone, was trying to plan something for a Wednesday night. And I was like, no, sorry, I can't do Wednesday nights. Like Wednesday nights are booked. So, that feeling of like, nope, no, I have a prior commitment, standing commitment Wednesday nights. Like, it's, to have it go, for a year. For the New Orleans people now, Wednesday nights have been booked for like almost 2 years, between Schatz and, all these other shows. But yeah, it's like, it's nice to have just kind of an ongoing community in that way, get to know each other.
I want to just add to the community piece that if anybody who's not already part of Beth Am is interested in any of these ongoing classes that Rabbi Pernick and I aren't yet teaching together, but that I'm teaching or that are happening in our system, please know you're welcome. We really do value you as part of our community as well. And everything is open. There's no fee. We would love to have you as students in our classes. And especially the ones that I teach, I'm happy to see your faces there and have you as part of them.
She teaches great classes.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Rabbi Barbara.
Yeah. I think this has been an extraordinary experience. Yes, it's because of COVID, but I think that COVID forced us to do something that we wouldn't have just done, or we might have done, but it would have been 10 years from now. And it's, it's great to be able to have, I'm from LA, and I know Beth Am, and I know people that go to Beth Am, and, it's to have that kind of place to go when you're, when I go home, or people who just come here because they come for a convention and know that they can come to Beth Israel. It's really, I think, a special experience. And I'm really glad that you did it. And it's, I've gotten to know a lot of people in our community that I didn't know.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. And agreed. I think that COVID forced us into it, but it was such a beautiful outcome. And one that really opened us up. This is actually not the first class that Rabbi Pernick and I taught during COVID.
That's right. I forgot. We taught something on Ruth.
Yeah, we taught on Megillat Ruth, like right at the beginning of COVID. Right. And that's when that class ended, because people enjoyed learning with us. I said, I think we should do this class. And at first, Rabbi Pernick was like, okay, one season. And then here we are. So I think that you're right, that we didn't really realize what the blessings were going to be to something that we were kind of forced into doing. Okay, well, Rabbi Pernick and I will definitely talk about how we can continue something. I know that each of our communities now have different things going on based on kind of reopening a little bit. And so it might not be as easy to just turn around and do something starting next week. But next week and the week after, if you're interested, at 7:30, so it's a little bit late for some of you, I'm going to be teaching a class on the different characters in Bereshit, in Genesis, who connect to the book and now the movie, TV show, The Handmaid's Tale. So if you're interested, it's just 2 weeks. It's just next week and the week after at 7:30 p.m. And it'll be a similar thing. We won't watch the show together, but it'll be a similar kind of comparison of modern day literature and film to our Torah. And thank you for that text, Rabbi Pernick. And I'm going to let Rabbi Pernick have the last word since he's spoken so much this podcast episode. I just want to say thank you. Mostly thank you to Rabbi Pernick, who said yes to something that I was sure he was going to say no to. But also,
I think I said no before. I think I said no a couple of times before.
No. You said yes to this. You said no to Ruth a few times, and then we just started teaching class together. But we said yes to this one pretty quickly. And also just, I think the end of the episode, though a little bit anticlimactic, kind of was a nice way of us being able to see that all these characters really settled into something, still together as a group, maybe on their own paths at this point. But I thought that was a nice kind of mirror into all of this in terms of all of us, settling back into life, though still contained as a group and as a community. So thank you for doing this. It's a really emotional thing to actually be ending it. But again, hopefully I'll get Rabbi Pernick to say yes to another class that we can teach together.
Lihitra out in the meantime.
Well, you all see tomorrow morning, but okay, Rabbi Pernick, go ahead.
Okay, did you say we're coming March 17th?
Yes, March 17th, and we'll be in New Orleans through the 20th.
That's Purim.
Yeah, we're coming after. We're going to be there at night.
Okay.
At night, yeah.
At night, okay.
Rabbi Pernick, you want the last word?
Thank you all for joining for this whole experience. It's really been a lot of fun. And hopefully a lot of you will get to see, the people who are local to here certainly hopefully will get to see you soon, and the Los Angeles people hopefully will get to see you soon as well in some iteration, whether in person or something virtual. But this has been quite the ride. So thank you for joining us along the way.
If you come the week before, you can celebrate the 77th anniversary of my bar mitzvah.
Wow!
That's the weekend before?
March 17th.
Along with twin brother Joe, but I may be in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Last year we Zoomed it, but it's Zachor.
It's very exciting. March 17th is the 21st anniversary of my bat mitzvah. So we'll be landing in New Orleans in order for me to get everybody a drink for my 21st anniversary of my bat mitzvah.
We'll get you a daiquiri.
Hurricane. Get a hurricane.
A hurricane.
All right, the hurricane.
Great. I don't know what that means, but I'm all for it. All right, thank you everybody. So lovely, and we'll keep you all posted.
You all are special.
Thank
you. Thank you, everybody.
It's been great.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.